serene mind with justice and charity for all, so that any and all decisions made by us will always be for the betterment and greater happiness of all our fellow citizens. So help us God. Amen.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance, please.
Alderman O'Brien. Alderwoman Timmons.
here.
Alderman Moran.
I'm here.
Alderman Thibodeau.
Here.
Alderman Govea.
Here.
Alderman Lopez. Alderman Sullivan.
Here.
Alderman Clemmons. Alderman Senate.
Here.
Alderman Jettie.
Here.
Alderman Tebow.
Here.
Alderman Clee.
Here.
Alderman Dowd.
Present.
Alderwoman Kelly. Alderman Wilshire.
Here.
11 present, 4 absent.
Thank you. Alderman O'Brien was under the weather this evening, and Alderman Clemmons is away on vacation. So I just want to let anybody know that might be here to talk about the $8.5 million bond. We are not taking that up this evening, so we will take that up on in our first meeting in March. Okay, communication?
Communication has been received from Tim Cummings, Administrative Services Director, regarding update on Mohawk Tannery.
There being no objection, I'll accept the communication and place it on file. Tonight we have a presentation at the Mohawk Tannery. Director Cummings.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. For the record, Tim Cummings, Director of Administrative Services. I rise this evening and ask for your attention relative to a presentation and an update on the Mohawk Tannery project. Before I begin my comments, I just want to note for the record that Alderman Clemmons reached out to me in advance of this meeting. As you all know, he expressed his regret for not being able to make it, but he did take the time to discuss the Mohawk Tannery because it is a project that's near and dear to his heart. I believe he actually was raised and grew up in Little Florida. So he did take the time to speak to me about the project. He continues to remain very positive about the project. He asked me to express those sentiments, and he was glad to hear that we are still working diligently to try to bring it forward. Madam President, with that said, my goal this evening is to provide you all with an update on where we're at. We've been working with the development team for quite a few years now to try to bring this project forward. We have a dedicated group working on this project internally. I would be remiss not to mention Director Sullivan, Deputy Corporation Counsel Leonard, myself, City Engineer Hudson meet regularly with the development team to try to work through the miscellaneous details to try to advance this project. This is a very complicated project, as you're about to hear. It's a project that I've been working on now for a better part of 6 or so years, and I'll leave it to Mr. Plant to actually give the exact dates, because I could be wrong on that. But it's one that I think, when it's all said and done, will be very good for the community overall. It will leave the municipality in a much better place than what it currently is now, which is the reason why we're all working towards this this initiative and this end goal. My final comment would be is I want to preface everything with everything will change as time. Things may change as time goes on. So inevitably, deals change as we work through various issues. So you may hear some details tonight, but as we continue to advance forward through the project and we have to recalibrate certain areas, it may end up changing for when you hear about it again. I believe the overall structure has been solidified, and so I don't believe it's going to change materially overall, but there may be some details that change here and there, and that's to be expected when you're working on a big, complicated project like this one is. We have multiple funding sources, and we have a pretty sophisticated development that would be looking to go in. But we're all working towards the same goal. So I did want to preface the comment tonight that folks should be prepared and understand, and that's also for the public's benefit as well, that there will be details that need to change along the way. We need to have that fluidity to be able to accomplish this Herculean effort and project. So with that being said, Madam President, I'd like to hand it over to Bernie Plant this evening, who will start it off. He'll then turn it over to his partner Lloyd, who will continue on with the presentation, and then if there's a Q&A, I'll be back up here with the team to answer any questions.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam President. Bernie?
Thank you, Madam President and members of the board. My name is Bernard Plant. I'm a lifelong Nashua resident. I've kept, I recall days of driving along Broad Street and Amherst Street and smelling the odors that emanated from Mohawk Tannery, as I'm sure a lot of you do as well. In fact, there are still odors on the right atmospheric conditions that are expelled from Mohawk Tannery as the two large 3.5 acre lagoons that the Mohawk Tannery people disposed of all the tannery waste in remain open. And one of our major goals is to contain those two lagoons. I have, over the last, I hate to think how many years, have developed several projects, many projects in the Nashua and surrounding towns. Tim was fairly close at 6 years. Tim's involvement and his group, Matt and Celia, have been involved for 6 years. However, I started a discussion about the Mohawk Tannery in 2014, believe it or not, with Donald Lee Lozo. It was at that time that the Broad Street Parkway looked like it would become a reality, and these properties, this 40 acres that make up Mohawk Tannery and Fimble Door, seemed like a good bet for development. This development would not be taking place, nor would the remediation, I would suggest, be taking place, because it takes a development of this size to support the expense to undertake the development, to undertake the remediation, rather. Without the Broad Street Parkway, access for this size project would be unacceptable to the Fairmont Heights and Little Florida neighborhood. So we're thankful for the city for sticking with the Broad Street Parkway for such a period of time. And luckily for us, when the Broad Street Parkway was planned, New Hampshire DOT, working with the city of Nashua, contemplated in their environmental impact statements the development of these properties. And in fact, foresaw that there would be a signalized intersection at the Parkway to service Mohawk and Fimble and a couple of adjoining properties. In September of 2020, Blaylock Holdings, which is a New Hampshire LLC that I formed, we entered into an agreement after better than a year's negotiations with EPA, entered into what they call a bona fide prospective purchaser agreement, which provided some protection from us from an environmental liability standpoint, but also laid out the requirements for the remediation. And along with that, the duration of the negotiation was in large part because of the amount of money that EPA was willing to put in toward the remediation. It took some while to get them up to the $6 million that they committed to. That has changed since, and Lloyd, my partner, will speak of that. Over the last 6 years, we've worked cooperatively with the city, the economic development, planning, engineering, and legal departments, and have made very good progress. As Tim pointed out, it's a complex project. When you involve EPA, New Hampshire DES, city, and other agencies, the paperwork and detail at times can become overwhelming, but we're making very good progress. About 4 years ago, I met Lloyd Geisinger. Lloyd is a well-known builder developer from Natick, Mass. At the time I was, and still am, working on a similar-sized project in Canton, Mass. That had similar environmental issues as Mohawk Tannery, not as complex. And we entered into agreement with Lloyd to come in and do some building. 250 units later, it's complete. Very beautiful project, very well respected. In that case, before we started the project, the tax revenue generated from that property was $75,000 a year. Next year, it'll be $1.9 million. So a similar circumstance here at Mohawk, where there's zero tax generation. When we're complete, there'll be a substantial benefit to the city, the neighborhood, and hopefully us as developers. So I have a lot of respect for Lloyd. I'm glad I brought him in. He had the depth that I was lacking in order to cobble this whole thing together. So I'll introduce Lloyd at this time, Lloyd Geisinger. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bernie. Madam President, Mr. Mayor, Board. For the record, my name is Lloyd Geisinger. I'm the president of Thorndike Development Corporation. As Bernie mentioned, we are based in Natick, Massachusetts, and we've been involved with Bernie now close to 2 years. We were before this board last January making a presentation, and what I'd like to do over the next 15 minutes or so is run through an updated version of that presentation. Many of you have already seen, but there are some updates recognizing that we have new board members as well as the public at large watching. We felt it made sense after a little more than a year, it's hard to believe, that we present again. This past year, we have spent the majority of our time working with city staff, as Tim mentioned, but also our entire consultant team working with the EPA and with DES to develop a detailed work plan. That work plan is on the 5-yard line right now. We are optimistic and aggressively moving towards starting construction before the end of this calendar year. So I'm going to put that stake in the ground. And we've got the entire team working around the clock to make that happen. So with that as an introduction, let me run through these slides. I have to decide where I should be looking here, huh? So I think everyone knows where the property is, off of Veterans Memorial Parkway, across the river from Mine Falls Park. And so what I'd like to do is run through an outline that starts with the history, moves on to a discussion of the cleanup, the redevelopment plan itself, and then spend some time on the legislative actions, some of the ones that have already been accomplished and the ones that are pending, and wrap up with a quick discussion of the timeline. This was the Mohawk Tannery building, and as I believe everyone knows, this is an air photo circa 1970s, when the tannery facility was still in place. You see it in the middle of this air photo, the thimble door factory, which is now gone, and the parkway runs through that land. And as Bernie was referencing, the two large tannery lagoons that are shown adjacent to the Nashua River are really the focus of the cleanup. There are other areas of contamination, but the plan is to put these lagoons to bed in a way that resolves the environmental potential danger of those carcinogens flooding into the Nashua River in a major storm event. Okay. I'm not working.
There it is.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. So as Bernie mentioned, the key to this whole thing was the parkway. Without the parkway, we didn't have the access. Without the access, we don't have the project. So that opened in 2015. Bernie had the foresight to see that coming, negotiated the acquisition of the properties, and discussions with the EPA. As we've discussed, there are 3 parcels of land that make up the entire district. The Mohawk parcel and the Thimble Door property, which Blaylock Holdings has under contract. And then immediately to the left on this slide is what we call the right-of-way parcel, which is owned by the city, And I'll get into that a little bit later, but it's critical to the redevelopment plan and the remediation plan. Again, as Bernie's already mentioned, the EPA committed to a $6 million grant, at the time the largest private grant it had committed to. I have to say the EPA has been terrific to work with. We've worked incredibly closely with them, and as we have updated our budgets, they have stepped up, and we'll get into that in a minute. And then, of course, in 2021, as Bernie mentioned, we joined the team, and have been working with Bernie and the city and the EPA since then. So with respect to the cleanup itself, the tannery, as we mentioned, sits in the middle of this plan. It is the focus of the cleanup. The lagoons that are closest to the river will be encased in concrete. They'll be capped, and that concrete encasement will elevate the lagoons itself, or I should say the cap, to the 500-year storm. So whereas right now, in a 100-year event, there would be a danger of an environmental event, when the cleanup is done, that would have to be more than a 500-year event before there would be any issue at all. And frankly, once the lagoons are capped as well with the sealing, even then, it would be incredibly unlikely that anything could happen. So all of the various contaminants will be consolidated into the area that's noted on this plan and shown as the permanent containment area. That is the area that will be surrounded with a concrete encasement wall and the material placed inside and then capped. In June of 2022, which is the first column of numbers, which was the first point at which we were able to put together a comprehensive budget, the total cost projected for the cleanup was just over $15 million. And those funds were fully covered through a combination of funds coming from the EPA, loans coming from the New Hampshire BFA, private equity. However, as the plans have evolved and gotten more detailed, additional testing resulted in a more comprehensive solution to the containment wall, and we all know what's happened to cost over the past 3 years. The column in the middle, which is as of today, really, the budget is now just over $23 million. We have excellent visibility at this point on all of the cost components. We've been working with a company by the name of Charter, who has done 17 other cleanup sites in the Northeast region with EPA, highly respected company. They've been working hand in glove with us. We now have 80% drawings, and they feel confident that they've been able to put a comprehensive budget together that we're going to be able to stick to. So we're working with that $23 million budget, and as you'll see shortly, we have managed to cover that $7.6 million funding gap so that we are once again fully funded and able to go forward. It's quite a capital stack, as Tim referred to. It's a little bit of a Rubik's Cube, but this is a summary of how the funds come together, both as they were back in June of '22 and as they are today. I mentioned a moment ago that the EPA has really stepped up. They have committed to increasing their grant from the $6 million that it was to $9.1 million, shown in that top line. We also met directly with Governor Sununu, and he has really stood behind the project and has committed $3.4 million, actually $3.5 million, but there are some administrative costs we're not showing here, to the project from the American Rescue Plan funds that he still has control over. So that is a firm commitment right now. There are several steps we have to go through, but we actually just today received a draft contract from the Department of Environmental Services, which will be managing the money. If you skip down to the bottom line, you'll note that Blaylock has committed to increasing its equity contribution by a little over $1 million. The other components of the capital stack, which are very important but remain unchanged, the New Hampshire BFA is making a $3 million loan, which gets repaid in two parts. I'll get into that a little bit later. The City of Nashua, working with staff, will become before you a proposal to loan $2 million in, which gets repaid from the development piece. And then at the time that this was put together, there were discussions about whether the right-of-way parcel would get paid up front or deferred. Despite what this slide says, our plan now is to pay for that at the outset as well. So that is kind of the financing piece. There's another important piece to the funding, however, and that is once the containment is completed, that containment cell will sit on its own separate lot and will be conveyed to a company by the name of Greenfield, which works with the EPA all around the country as a fiduciary that will set up a special trust for the management of the property in perpetuity. The funding for the annualized operations and maintenance of that parcel will come from the development property and the development behind it, and be part of the condominium association, homeowner association obligation and fees. The plan itself, once we get this thing cleaned up, as we've discussed and described to the board before and shown in this three-dimensional modeling of the property, there are really three parts to it. The front half portion of the property shows 4 buildings that contain 230 apartments, and there are 38 affordable units planned and committed as part of that as part of that apartment piece of it. Behind that are 316 condominiums, which will make an in-kind contribution to the Housing Trust of just over $2.3 million. And then there are recreation facilities along the river, as well as almost 10 acres of green space that will be donated to the city at the far right of this slide, which in this case is to the south. Just by way of giving you a better sense of how this thing is going to turn out, these are incredibly accurate three-dimensional modeling off of definitive plans. As you can see, once the containment area is completed and capped, it's suitable for recreation on top. This is a shot of the kayak and canoe launch, which is shown at the bottom of the page, which is part of the commitment. The river walk, a tot lot to the left, another shot of the river walk and the fields that would sit on top of the containment area once it's capped. Better shot of the playground planned as part of this solution, a dog park. Oops, what happened here? How did we go off of the... There we go. And the pedestrian bridge over the Nashua River, connecting this portion of Nashua, not just this new neighborhood, but Little Florida and Fairmont Heights and the surrounding areas over to Mine Falls Park. And then just another shot, a final shot, looking back at the development from the ball fields of Mine Falls Park. So I mentioned the pedestrian bridge, which has been part of the recreation plan for the city for quite some time. The logical place for that bridge to spring from, unfortunately, was on the Mohawk Tannery property. So until that property could be cleaned up, it really didn't make sense to build the bridge. The bridge is part of the development plan, and here we're showing the various connections from the surrounding areas that will allow existing residents, as well as the new residents, to take advantage of that connection. Finally, a couple of shots of the primary street as we envision it. Everything that Thorndike does is based on the principles of smart growth and traditional neighborhood design, creating pedestrian-friendly streets, and that's what we have in mind here. This is a shot of how we anticipate this. The buildings have direct entry flats at the ground level, which will help to enliven the street and screen a parking garage that's behind. A shot again of looking back towards the south here, and a series of small but very usable spaces off of those direct entry flats that again will help to create energy and enliven the space. Come on. Okay. This is just a table that speaks to the affordable housing, 38 units and the $2.3 million, actually $2,368,000 that we've already talked to, so I'll skip past that, which gets us to the Board of Aldermen actions that we would be requesting, or I should say staff will be requesting, that are necessary to get this project underway. Several of which have already been completed when we were before the board last year. The board has already rezoned several of these parcels so they all exist in the same RC zoning, and in combination with that created the Veterans Memorial Parkway Overlay District, which is shown here and is coincident with the master plan, and as well as approving the master concept plan, which sits on top of or within the overlay district. Those are the completed actions. The pending actions are to authorize the city to enter into the master development agreement, which is the critical document. We have been working with staff on that. We're dotting the i's and crossing the t's. It's very, very close to being ready to submit, but I'll leave that to Tim to address. And then two actions that relate to transfer of property. Earlier I mentioned the right-of-way parcel that's shown here and highlighted. This is land that was part of the original right-of-way taking, which proved to be required as part of the parkway construction. We have worked with New Hampshire DOT. They did an appraisal, which has been approved, so there's a purchase price of $990,000 for this property, all of which unfortunately goes to DOT. And at the same time, we would need authorization from the city to accept the ownership of the permanent open space parcel, which is highlighted here in the dark green down at the bottom of the slide. I mentioned earlier that there's a $2 million loan that is part of the capital stack that would come from the Housing Trust Fund to help with the remediation. There'll be an authorization as well required for that. And there's back taxes that we've discussed with the board in the past as well that would be waived, and there would be a request for that pending. Ultimately, the New Hampshire BFA loan gets partially repaid through a tax increment financing equivalent that comes out of the Housing Authority, $2.5 million of it. And I have a slide in a moment that talks to those numbers, but there needs to be authorization to allow the Housing Authority to enter into that agreement. We've talked about the pedestrian bridge, which is targeted to be funded, paid for by the development, but reimbursed through general obligation bonds. And this then is the slide that I was referencing a moment ago that has to do with that shows the taxes that are anticipated to come into the project that would allow for the repayment of the tax increment financing and still leave in excess almost $1.9 million of taxes in the first year of fully stabilized occupancy. Just a footnote on this. This is a slide that has not been updated. This is from last January. But as we move forward with submissions, we will be updating this table for the board. That brings us to really my last slide, which is a schedule overview. So we are now in 2024. I still have a hard time believing that, but we are. And working with this board, with the planning board, and EPA and DES to get all of this buttoned up and packaged by the fall, at which point we would close on the property and the remediation work would begin immediately. That work is anticipated to take between 9 and 12 months. It's not a very long time. It's a very, very compressed program. There is then a sign-off period that takes about 6 months in which the EPA does a rigorous sign-off process, basically a punch list process, at which point we would be ready to begin the first of the development work. When you take all that and add it all together, we hope and expect that the first residents will be living in the first buildings 3 years from today. So, 10 years and counting on the project, another 3 years to get to the first residents. It is certainly a long process, but one of an incredibly important community development. Certainly, I consider it the most important project we've ever worked on in my 41 years in this business. The rest is the build-out of the project, which is probably another 5 or 6 years to get to the finish line. Next steps, we owe the community a formal outreach. We've had some informal communications. We've kept them abreast with several letters. We're going to be scheduling a public meeting. We'll make everyone here aware of it and work with you to coordinate that. I've talked about the fact that we meet with the EPA and DES regularly. That's an ongoing process. And then we hope to be filing the required legislation shortly with the board. And that concludes my remarks. Be happy to answer questions. Tim, do you want to MC this? Sure. Okay.
Thank you, Madam President, and through the board. As you can see here, it's a project that we've been working on in a very deliberative fashion over the last year, and more than that, over the last few years. We're taking our time to make sure we're thinking through all the details, but we got to make sure we dot the i's, cross the t's. So we're here this evening to provide you an update, take any questions that you may have. I know you have another meeting following on after this, so Madam President, I'm not sure what the pleasure may be relative to the Q&A, but happy to answer any questions that may arise. But the point that I want to leave you with this evening is we're working hard to try to make this project happen along the timelines that was just outlined. There's an issue that I want to raise, which is last year around this time, we had a cost, and it was about $5 or $6 million less. Every year that we wait, we could anticipate the same type of increase year over year. And so we really should try to work hard as a community to get this project going this year so we can lock these numbers in and start actually on the construction. But with that being said, we don't want to rush anything. We want to continue with our deliberative effort here. But if we could all agree to try to get under construction for this summer, I think that would be the ultimate goal that we should strive for. With that, Madam President, I appreciate you making the time this evening. Thank you.
Director Cummings.
Yes.
The gentleman, Lloyd, forget his last name, referenced the master development agreement.
Yep.
Where is that in the process?
So the two parties, the city staff along with the project applicant have been working on a draft document that we would like to have presented. My goal is to try to have that presented before this body. I would suggest in an April timeframe. If we could make an April meeting, I think that would be put us on the trajectory to try to get us under construction for this summer. It's more than just the master development agreement. There are separate approvals that are going to be necessary for all the various elements that were highlighted in this project. Waiving of the back taxes, the financing documents, the master development agreement. There's miscellaneous approvals that will be necessary, the selling of the real estate. The right-of-way, and that piece of real estate. So again, those miscellaneous approvals all will come before this body and need to go through its proper process individually. But that is the trajectory we're on. The Master Development Agreement is obviously the coordinating document that is quarterbacking this project.
So we'll expect something for the board in April.
That is our goal, yes.
Okay. Anyone have questions? Alderwoman Kelly.
Thank you. I know that a community outreach meeting was mentioned with updates to come. That's going to come before the master agreement comes before us?
I'm going to let the community outreach engagement. So Bernie's saying it's before. And I want to be clear, there's actually a couple different types of community outreach engagements that occur. I think there's one that's going to be project driven, the applicant. But then the EPA and DES have their own separate processes as well, where various types of community engagements can be necessary as well. That would be in addition to this meeting that was referenced.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Clee.
Thank you, Madam President. It was just basically to the property. The canoe kayak launch, is that going to be open to the public?
Yes,
And they will access it from the Veterans Parkway, is that correct?
correct.
The bridge that goes across, will the non-residents of this property, how will they traverse?
There's public access easements all along the
All
route
along
here.
the
Yep,
river.
that will provide connectivity into the neighborhood along the riverfront, and then you'd have the pedestrian bridge as well. I also want to note that this is a public document, right? So this slide deck will be put up on the website. There's a Mohawk Tannery City website. I suspect we will update this, upload this to that page, tomorrow or sometime this week.
Can I follow up, please?
Alderman Clee.
Thank you. I think you did answer it, but I didn't quite understand. So those in the neighborhood behind it, they will be able to access through this property to get to that bridge?
Correct.
And I know that there's going to be a gate to stop anyone from driving through either direction,
It's a pedestrian walk.
but there is a pedestrian walk that will be through. Thank you. That's my only question.
Anyone else? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
To the gentleman that's, not tonight. Not on this. There'll be community outreach sessions that you can ask your questions. Thank you very much for coming tonight. We appreciate you.
Madam President, I just need us to get a USB for the clicker.
Oh, yeah.
It's in there.
Sure.
You got to shut down the program first. Yeah. I know, I just had
Alderman Dowd, do we have a motion?
Yes. I'd like to make a motion that the February 27th, 2024 special meeting of the Board of Aldermen be adjourned by roll call.
The motion is to adjourn. Will the clerk call the roll?
It doesn't have to be
We
by
don't need to
roll.
We don't need a
It
roll
was
call.
just added to the.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carried. We're going to go right into our next meeting, so.
Could you
Dan,
tell
your
one more
side.
time, because people come in?
February 27th, 2024, at 7:39 PM here in the Aldermanic Chamber. The prayer will be offered by City Clerk Dan Healy, and Alderman-at-Large Melbourne Moran Jr. will lead us in the pledge to the flag.
Almighty God, we have the high honor and the serious duty to manage the affairs of our beloved city. Fill us, O God, with a spirit of unity and understanding, which enables us to face our multiple problems with a serene mind, with justice and charity for all, so that any and all decisions made by us will always be for the betterment and greater happiness of all our fellow citizens. So help us God. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call, please.
Alderman O'Brien. Alderwoman Timmons.
Here.
Alderman Moran.
Here.
Alderman Thibodeau.
Here.
Alderman Govea.
Here.
Alderman Lopez. Alderman Sullivan.
Here.
Alderman Clemmons. Alderman Senate.
Here.
Alderman Jettie.
Here.
Alderman Tebow.
Here.
Alderman Clee.
Here.
Alderman Dowd.
Present.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Here.
Alderman Wilshire.
I'm here.
12 present, 3 absent.
And we have a quorum. Alderman O'Brien is under the weather, Alderman Clemmons is away on vacation, and that's all I know. So just for the public, I'm going to let you know that we are not taking up Resolution 24005 this evening. That's on the $8.5 million bond. We will not be taking that up until our first meeting in March. Also with us tonight is Mayor Donchis and Corporation Counsel Steve Bolton. Mayor, did you wish to address the board this evening?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I want to discuss a few things. First, as I informed you via a memo this week, CFO Treasurer Tax Collector John Griffin has decided to retire as of June 30, July 1. He has been with the city since 2010. He has contributed greatly to the city's financial stability, all of our financial success, the AAA bond ratings, and all of the budgets through my own and Mayor Lozo's administrations. So I really want to thank John for his service to the city. I've enjoyed working with him. He's been a very effective financial leader. Now, fortunately, he has agreed to return later in the summer on a part-time basis because our plan, and we're optimistic that we can fulfill the need to hire a treasurer tax collector between now and June 30. And John would then return as a CFO for a temporary period of time, helping to train the new treasurer tax collector on anything he or she is not proficient in, if he or she is not proficient already. And therefore, we would want to hire someone as treasurer tax collector who could assume the role of CFO. So we have a few months to do that, and we are posting the job, and I think we are optimistic that we'll receive some very qualified applicants. Anyway, I wanted to thank John, and I know you've all worked with him at various times, and it's sad to leave him, but he wants to spend more time with his kids. He has a couple of, or 1 or 2 grandchildren, and I'm sure he will enjoy his retirement. Next, Madam President, I did want to mention that the city, this week, Wallet Hub came out again with its ratings of the safest cities in the United States. After a couple of years of being number 2, I believe, now we have ascended to number 1, safest city in the United States, according to the Wallet Hub survey. Now, they rate 188 cities based upon home and community safety is one area, natural disaster risk is another, and financial safety is a third. Now, contrary to some of the things that were said on Facebook and the internet, the city did not pay for this. We did not no one from, as far as I know, no one from the city government even spoke to Wallet Hub. I've never spoken to Wallet Hub. We did not lobby for this. They do their independent research, their independent evaluation every year, and they do not contact us or I assume any of the other cities. So I believe, as I stated last week, that we are fortunate to be living in Nashua for many reasons, this being one of them. And I want to thank everybody who's contributed to this honor. Our police and fire departments, but also our citizens. The level, for example, of person-to-person assaults in Nashua is very, very low compared to other cities. So I think it's a well-deserved given the citizenry and our city employees that we receive this honor again, and I think if we continue to work together, we can continue to maintain a safe city and safe neighborhoods. Madam President, I also wanted to mention that I see on the agenda again this committee that you and I, Madam President, appointed to review the capital projects, the potential capital projects that the city is considering. As I said last time, we have, if you add them up, and we will present to this committee a whole list, and we can make presentations regarding all these projects. We have $250 or $300 million worth of projects that could be undertaken, but we can't begin to afford that much. CFO Griffin is suggesting that at a maximum we do $30 million a year for 5 years. Year one is already largely, the $30 million is already largely committed because of these various school needs that the Budget Committee was discussing last night, and some other things. So the purpose of this committee is to bring staff and some aldermen that President Wilshire designated to discuss these projects in detail and make recommendations to the full board as to what order, which are the most important projects, in what order and in what priority we should begin to undertake them. And so I hope if this does come up again that you will again act favorably upon it. And finally, Madam President, I wanted to mention that the Greater Nashua United Way hosted an open house earlier on February 21, where the Smart Start Coalition presented its programs. This is a very worthwhile program. Their programs are directed to serving young families with children 8 years and younger. They promote and support healthy children and families by focusing on physical and behavioral health. They provide overall support and resources for the whole family by creating a parent network. Parents can work with each other, and a lot of these meetings will take place at the Arlington Street Community Center. So this is a community strengthening, family strengthening program that this Smart Start Coalition is contributing to our community, and I wanted to thank them for doing that. And that's all I have, Madam President.
Thank you, Mayor. Responses to the remarks from the mayor? Alderman Clegg.
Thank you, Madam President. I was able to attend the Greater Nashua United Way Smart Start program. My intention was actually to go there for about 20 minutes and then leave there and go to the dedication at the School Street Flats. But it was so involved and so inviting, I should say. Everything that they're doing is just amazing work, and it's not just Nashua. It goes Nashua, Merrimack, Milford, 13 communities plus Nashua are working on all of this, and it's just amazing what they're doing. And this parent network at the Arlington, I think also Nashua PAL is part of it and such, and I'm so happy that the mayor and so many other public health and so on are all, including I think our Nashua Police Department as well, are all working with this group and so on, and I think we should all learn more about it. Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll conclude that. Recognition period.
New Hampshire's Kid Governor, Ellie Lively.
Madam President, can I introduce, please, since she's in my ward?
You sure can.
I'll have her come up. So, thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to introduce our Kid Governor of New Hampshire. She comes from Ward 8, my ward, and she wants to come up, and she wants to say a little bit about her platform as well. Ellie Lively, Governor Lively, would you please come up?
But before our governor speaks, we do have a formal recognition here from the city congratulating Ellie Lively on your election to the office of Kid Governor of New Hampshire. Whereas Kid Governor empowers fifth graders to change the world, as this groundbreaking approach to civics education immerses students in a real election for the state's Kid Governor, a fellow fifth grader who will represent them during a one-year term of active leadership. And whereas participants identify issues impacting their communities and state, research solutions, create platforms to address those issues, and make campaign videos. Schools run primaries to select a nominee, and each school's winner advances to the state level. And whereas after having won the election, Ellie will serve a one-year term of leadership and advocacy, working with her state's Kid Governor affiliate organization to fulfill her campaign platforms and encourage students to make a difference in their own communities. Now, therefore, I, Jim Donchis, Mayor of the City of Nashua, and the Board of Aldermen, do hereby recognize, congratulate, and thank Ellie Lively of Nashua, New Hampshire, for her commitment and leadership on this date, February 27th, 2024. So congratulations.
You could also sit,
We're gonna have her sit at Mike.
sit at Michael O'Brien's seat.
Then she doesn't need that.
Yeah.
Hi, I am Ellie Lively from Bicentennial Elementary School and the 2024 New Hampshire's Kid Governor. I am honored to be here today. New Hampshire's Kid Governor is a civics education program that immerses students into learning about state government, elections, voting, and civic participation through a real-life election for the state's Kid Governor. I won the election this year with my platform on decreasing animal abuse in New Hampshire. I am so pleased that I will be able to carry out my platform on decreasing animal abuse in New Hampshire with the help of the New Hampshire Civic and the New Hampshire Institute of Politics at St. Anselm's College. I love all animals and feel as they should be treated well. Think about how many people in New Hampshire have pets. A lot, right? In the United States, every minute an animal suffers from animal abuse. Some reasons people might abuse animals are they don't know how to take care of an animal. Other people don't consider animals living creatures, and sadly, some even find hurting animals entertaining. I want to help these animals. In 2023, there were over 8 cases of animal abuse in New Hampshire that made the news so far. No matter what the reason, I believe that all animals should be loved and cared for when they need it most. According to New Hampshire law, all complaints about animal abuse must be filed with local law enforcement. If someone sees an act that they believe to be animal cruelty, it should be reported to local law enforcement officials. I will work hard to be a good kid governor. Let me tell you a few things about me. I am the oldest out of 3 girls, which shows I am responsible. I have to balance my time between my sports, basketball and lacrosse, my sister's sports, homework, band, I play the saxophone, and other things, so now I add kid governor in there too. Lastly, I listen to others when they want to speak, I help out when I can, and most importantly, I'm not afraid to ask for help. As kid governor, I will coordinate with the animal shelters in New Hampshire so that 5th graders can volunteer at their local shelters. I already volunteer to read to the animals, and I would like to get others involved as well. I will hold donation drives to provide food and supplies to shelters. I will make videos to share with 5th graders in New Hampshire about how they can stop animal abuse and how to properly care for their pets. As part of my awareness campaign, I will run a blog on the New Hampshire Kid Governor's website, which will include the contact information of the closest shelter if anyone needs help caring for their animals, and a list of ways people can help stop animal abuse. This is what I want to do to help stop animal abuse as New Hampshire's Kid Governor.
That is very, very impressive. Congratulations. How do we follow that? That was great. Reading minutes of previous meetings. There being no objection, I'll declare the minutes of the Special Board of Aldermen meeting of February 8th, 2024 be accepted, placed on file, and the reading suspended. Communications requiring procedural actions and written reports from liaisons.
Communication has been received from Richard Lannon, Chair, regarding 2023 Annual Report, Nashua Center for the Arts.
There being no objection, I'll accept the communication and place it on file. Period for public comment relative to items expected to be acted upon this evening. No one has signed up for the first comment period. Is it something we're going to be taking action on this evening?
It would be something that we could discuss next, or next.
If we're not taking action on it, you have to wait till the second comment period. Okay? Okay. Communications requiring final approval.
Communication has been received from Mayor Jim Donchis regarding multi-year contract award, no B4.
Alderman Clee.
I apologize, Madam President. I motion to accept, place on file, and approve a 36-month contract renewal for the continued operation of No B4 subscription services for email phishing training software with No B4 in the amount of $20,356.48. Funding will be through Department 120 Technology Maintenance Fund, 54407 Software Maintenance General Fund. By roll call, please.
Okay. Discussion on that motion? Seeing no discussion, we don't need a roll call. if
I
you-
know, it just says it on here.
I think the roll call was put on these because I think Alderman Lopez was going to
Try to
zoom
come
in, but I don't think that happened, so roll calls aren't required.
He probably couldn't get a connection from Honduras.
Yeah.
No discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Alderman Moran.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to make a motion to reconsider the communication received from Mayor Donchis and President Wilshire relative to the formation of an ad hoc joint committee to provide recommendations on debt service planning relative to the anticipated capital expenditure over the next 5 years. And if I could speak to it.
Alderman Moran.
Thank you, Madam President. As some of you may have remembered from general discussion last meeting, after hearing a lot of the conversation about the ESSER funds and then some back and forth about you don't go to the meeting, you shouldn't say anything at this meeting, this, that, and the other thing. I had the thought to consider for reconsideration of this particular ad hoc committee because it adds another meeting on. And at some point, we'll all get frustrated over it again. And I'm not averse to it overall. I think debt service planning is a great idea, but I also think it's something that can be done at the Budget Committee as a subcommittee. And I'm hoping that we can reconsider it at a minimum, so I can make an amendment to add someone into the committee, because right now it sits at 8. What if there's a tie? And then 3 of the 8 members are not elected officials, which is a whole another thing, but that's my personal opinion as one elected official. But I feel that at minimum we could reconsider to amend, and I would put forth someone, not me. I know where my specialty lies, and it's not in this. But I think another member from this board would be a good tiebreaker if that did come about. If it failed, I would hope it would be done, this work would be done at the Budget Committee.
Alderman Jettie.
The motion that's before us is to reconsider. So a yes vote would just to bring it up for discussion, without adopting any change at this point. It would just allow us to discuss it further.
Correct.
A no vote would stop us from even talking about it. And the motion that was passed last time would just stand as is. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Further discussion? The motion is for reconsideration
By roll call.
by roll call. Clerk, call the roll, please.
Alderwoman Timmons.
Yes.
Alderman Moran.
Yes.
Alderman Thibodeau.
No.
Alderman Govea.
No.
Alderman Sullivan.
No.
Alderman Senate.
Yes.
Alderman Jettie.
Yes.
Alderman Tebow.
Yes.
Alderman Clee.
Yes.
Alderman Dowd.
Yes.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Yes.
Alderman Wilshire.
No.
8 yeas, 4 nays.
And that motion carries.
Uh,
Alderman Moran.
Thank you, Madam President. So first, I would like to motion for an amendment to add another member of the Board of Aldermen to the Ad hoc Formation Committee. How do I seek Corporation Counsel? What's the best way to form this motion?
Well, there's no motion on the floor right now, so there's nothing to amend.
So final passage.
So if you wanted to accept the communication, place it on file, and authorize the committee as stated therein, you could then amend it to say, with the addition of an additional member of the Board of Aldermen to be selected by President Wilson, or whatever you want it to, however you want it to be done.
Okay, I like that. That's good. Right, then yes, so I would make the motion for final passage first, then ask to amend after I make that motion, or do it all together.
You might do it all together,
Okay.
just the way I described it.
Great, thank you. So, I can be such a hassle, I know. Then, Madam President, I'd like to make a motion for final passage of the formation of an ad hoc joint committee to provide recommendation on debt service planning relative to the anticipated capital expenditure over the next 5 years, to be amended, authorizing President Wilshire to add an additional member of the Board of Aldermen to said committee.
Okay, you've heard the motion. Is there discussion? Alderman Moran.
So, hearing the wise wisdom of Alderman Timmons, obviously, I think it'd be in the best interest for the president to name, as she speaks for all of us. I would have offered a couple of folks, but I don't want to drag the meeting on all night to say who would have been this, who would actually want to do it. I think we have a president. I think that we're the best person to. She's already made 4 great selections, but hopefully another 5th one. That's not me, please.
Okay. Careful what you ask for. So you've heard the motion. Further discussion? Alderman Jettie.
So as I understand the motion, the sole purpose of the motion is to add another alderman to be selected by the president solely for the purpose of making sure there's an odd number on this committee. Is that correct?
That's how I understand it, Alderman Moran.
Yeah, that's part of it. I came into the meeting with the intentions to kill it, but then I read more information from, I had a conversation with Director Cummings after last meeting. I read more information about it. I'm not overly adverse to it. I still think it can be done in committee. Whether we pass this as amended or it fails outright, I'd be happy either way. But I think at minimum that it needs to have 9 voting members in case there's a tiebreaker. I think that other person should be an elected official.
Alderman Clee.
Thank you, Madam President. I voted yes so that the conversation could happen. I'm not sure that adding another member is really going to change the dynamic of it. Because then what happens if one of the people don't come? Now you've got 8, do you not hold the meeting? And I'm being a little sarcastic, so I apologize for that. But I understand what you're saying and why you're saying it. I think it's a good formation of a committee to have staff and to have aldermen. They're not making the decision, they're just kind of having that discussion, which will be brought to budget or whatever committee is appropriate for that particular discussion. I think it's, in some respects, kind of good to happen outside of the board. It's not tainted by one way. I think staff have a different perspective as to what their needs are, and it's not all coming from here. Yes, we can have them come, talk to us, tell us what's, and then we cherry pick which ones we think are more important. But I think having staff or whomever the mayor put on from his side of it is a good idea. I am not going to vote for the extra member. I think it was done as it was, to be fair and honest, so that it's not, the scales aren't tipped. But I do understand the need, your comment about an odd number does help that vote if it becomes that way. If I'm not mistaken, anytime there's a vote, a true vote, and it's a tie, it fails. So that's just my comment on it. Thank you.
Alderman Govea.
Thank you, Madam President. To the maker of the motion, have you considered removing a member of the mayor's administration instead of adding another alderman? And then making it to a 7-person committee, removing one, so we're not bringing in a 5th alderman, but yet just removing someone from the mayor's administration. I mean, they can still show up to the meetings and talk if they want, but yet we're not bringing in a 5th member. So the committee's getting smaller instead of getting larger when it comes to the voting members.
Alderman Moran.
So you're asking me to say publicly which administrative staff I would love to have removed from this committee?
I would leave that up to the maker of the communication.
As Director Cummings stares me down.
Alderman Tebow.
Thank you, Madam President. I, like Alderman Moran, don't like this committee. I think we have a capital improvements committee. Don't they kind of prioritize our capital projects? I also think it could be done in budget, finance, other meetings. I do think that any one of us can attend this new committee meeting and say whatever we want, like we always do to any committee. So, I mean, we have that, we still have a voice, whether we have a vote or not. But at the end of the day, I don't see a problem with a 5th, because there's times when we don't have everyone. So even to me, a 5th one is almost like an alternate or a bonus, because there's times when we can't make meetings, and having that extra person will certainly help. But, you know, I feel pretty same as you do, so.
Alderman Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam President. I think the makeup of the board is fine. As far as even versus odd, in rereading the communication, it doesn't seem as though the main charge of this committee is to craft legislation. It's simply to make recommendations. I think that this is a really good idea because it allows capital improvement and budget to create that long-term thinking. You know, the budget committee simply looks at the current fiscal year. I think the makeup of this committee is good because it brings in a little bit of everybody into the mix. And as far as creating legislation, it doesn't seem as though this is the main charge of this committee. So I'm good with the 8, and you know, leave it up to you if you want to assign an alternate system or whatnot, but I'm good with the way it is.
Alderman Dowd.
Yeah, a couple things. One, it's my understanding that they're just going to discuss the projects that are on the table and sort of lay out a prospective timeline when they could be done and fit into the city's finances. I'm the representative to the CIC this year, and we are changing things because it's my opinion over the last couple of years that the CIC is broken, and we're trying to fix it. If the CIC selections aren't in concert with the city's budget committee and this new committee's priorities, then the whole system's broken. We have a whole bunch of projects to consider, and they're going to have to be prioritized.
And none of them take effect until it comes to this board for approval. It'll probably go through budget first, but, because all these projects are gonna have to be bonded, there'll have to be public hearings, they will have to be vote of the budget committee, a vote of the full board aldermen. The idea is to have a logical plan. CIC is going to is probably going to prioritize little things differently than they have in the past. To me, at least in my thought process, A1 projects are something that has to be done in the following year. And to make that work, it needs to tie in to the budget committee and this other committee's prioritization of city projects. I've made suggestions, and we're still in progress because we're just starting CIC. CIC, when they come up with a draft this year, they're gonna send the draft to the budget committee to discuss as part of the budget process for FY '25, to determine whether it fits within our budget. And that would also be in concert with this new committee where the city is trying, the mayor and his department heads are trying to work with the Board of Aldermen and prioritize what needs to be done. To me, top priority projects include things that involve safety, projects that need to be done for the benefit of the city and the members of the public. You know, there are certain criteria that need to be dictated as to what goes before which. And we can't do them all at once. There's no way we can afford it. So the question is, this committee is going to talk about alternatives. Why should this one be done before that one? It's also a public meeting. Any of the board aldermen can attend and comment. Members of the public can attend and listen to what's going on. So I guess I was willing to listen to the discussion based on Alderman Moran, but I don't think adding another person is required. I'm not on that committee, but I intend being here and talking to my thoughts on the projects. So I guess I would not be in favor of this particular motion. I think we ought to just leave it as is, with 8 members. Let the discussions go forth. Try to tie the discussions that they have in this new committee with CIC and with the budget committee, so that we can make logical decisions on what the city can afford to spend and why they're spending it.
Alderman Jettie.
Thank you. So I think this is a good idea. I don't see any harm in adding another alderman, and I see some great benefit. I think, you know, I've been on this board long enough to know that, you know, although it's true that it's, you know, the Board of Aldermen who makes the final decision, you know, my experience has been that, you know, lots of times things are handed to us in such a way that, you know, we don't, you know, we don't always assert ourselves as much as maybe we should or, you know, could. You know, I think you know, there have been, in my opinion, which could be completely wrong, there have been many situations where, you know, the staff, you know, provides us with legislation. I mean, and it's a done deal. We don't have, you know, much opportunity to, you know, to do anything with it. So I think having another alderman, you know, I think the point about having an odd number, I mean, that's pretty much the rule, you know, the rule, you know, whether it's a rule or just in practice. You know, most committees, you have an odd number for the very reason that's been stated, that you have, that you prevent ties. But I also like the idea of there being more aldermen than city staff. And I know the mayor is elected, but he's part of the staff. The comments about the capital improvement committee, I was on the capital improvement committee, and I was disillusioned when I found out that whatever recommendations the committee makes, it's up to the mayor to agree with them or not. No matter how we rated projects, it's up to the mayor to pick the projects that he wants to back. And he doesn't always follow, what the capital improvements committee has come up with. And he's the mayor, so that's his privilege. But, I hate, I think his idea of proposing this committee is a great one. I think that, the reasons for doing it, to try to get a handle on our bonding program and look to the future, I think it's a great idea, and I think it's another example of how well he manages the city. But, I would like the aldermen to still have, a majority role in this committee. And, the staff people will be there to point out what they feel is important, and as well as the mayor. But, I like the idea of the odd number. I like the idea of the majority being aldermen. So I support this.
Alderman Kelly?
Thank you. And thank you for bringing this back up for reconsideration. I think a lot of the things I was going to say have been put out on the table, but as I said last time, my initial reaction was, why aren't we doing this in budget? Because it is very intrinsically tied to the city budget, and what we're going to be spending each year will be impacted by the work that we do in this ad hoc committee. That being said, I've been on this board for a number of years, and I trust your leadership, so if this is what we're looking to try in terms of an innovative approach to looking at our debt service, then I think that makes sense. I agree with adding another person. I think most of our other committees do have that ability, so we don't get deadlocked. I understand that the ad hoc is probably going to be more of a discussion than a lot of different actual pieces of policy, but I don't think it could hurt to have an additional alderman on there.
Alderman Clay and then Alderman Timmons.
Alderman Timmons had not had a chance to speak. I'll let her speak first.
Thank you,
Alderman
Clay.
Timmons.
I agree with adding on another. I'm going to support it because I think more eyes is better. The more we see, the more we know, and sometimes there's people that are not able to attend, so that extra person would always be welcome. I plan on attending this, even though my name is not on the list, but I don't want to be obligated to it. So,
There you go.
but I think putting another extra person on the committee can't hurt, and they're not voting. So, I mean, they have to come to the budget, then they have to come to the full board anyway. So, I think it's a good thing.
Alderman Clay.
Two comments. One, may I ask what the intrinsic difference between the CIC and this committee? I just hate for the CIC to do their work, the Capital Improvement Committee to do their work, based on what Alderman Jettie said, only to have this committee say, no, we're going to redo it all. I feel like we're wasting their time, and I don't. I'm all for this committee. Please understand that. I just, after hearing that comment, I had a little angst as to what the difference between this committee, if the mayor or yourself would speak to it, I'd appreciate it.
Did you want to speak to it?
I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
Well, I think first of all, I don't see this as maybe I'm naive, but as something where there's going to be a lot of 5 to 4 votes. I mean, hopefully there would be discussion and kind of give and take, and we'd come up with, a priority list that kind of everyone agrees to. But in direct answer to your question, this has decision makers on it. I mean, the CIC is, they don't, you know, I mean, their recommendations are helpful, but we as elected officials don't necessarily have to follow them or agree or whatever. Now, you don't have to agree with this committee either, but it has enough people who are very knowledgeable about these projects, some members of the Board of Aldermen, so it has actual decision makers who then, having thought through this whole process, I think have more credibility with the whole board to, convince them that, or persuade them, or put forward the case that this is the proper set of priorities. The board in the end could disagree, but I guess my experience has been if you have some actual decision makers in the process, it's more likely to be a product that ultimately is adopted.
Alderman Clayton.
Still now 2 more comments. Having heard that, and I don't mean to upset the apple cart here, but with this, do we need to have the CIC, or are we compelled to have a CIC? We're compelled to have it. Okay. Then I will leave that as is without asking any more questions on that. I originally stated that I didn't think there was a need for an extra one, but after listening to my colleagues and so on, and having been on boards where, for whatever reason, people aren't able to make a meeting and so on, which brings that group down to smaller and smaller, I think it is better to have the additional decision maker. And I won't run away from my decision if that be the case. I'm not on the budget committee, but I'm happy to help. Thank you.
Alderman Jettie?
Yeah, could I, through you, ask the mayor, do you have any objection to there being another alderman on this committee?
Not really, no. I mean, I mean, in a way, the more there are, the better chance there is that this would be persuasive. And the idea is to kind of to come up with a consensus approach towards a whole set of projects that we can't afford all of them. So these are not easy. I mean, they are all desirable, but, and I'm sure you agree, we just can't come up with all that much money. So I don't have a problem with another alderman, no.
All set?
Thank you.
Alderman Kelly?
Okay.
Alderman Moran?
Thank you, Madam President. No one wanted to spend this much time talking about this, but of course, I'm the one that gets to make the motion. So I appreciated the comments from my colleague from Ward 5. There does tend to sometimes, more often than not, have that pressure of, we heard it today with Mohawk Tannery. We have to get it done. But we have to get it done. You get a lot of time to ask questions in that compressed time. Not, with the tannery or anything that we do, we should be able to parse it out, even if it's...
Your microphone.
We should be able to parse it out, even though it's here at the full board, too. There's that constant pressure I always feel that if we don't do it now, because all these other people have said this is a good idea, then you're like, it's like peer pressure. It's like a very psychological technique in management. It's sometimes obvious, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it really is an urgent need, like a data breach or something like that. But I think the more folks involved, the more parsed out it gets by the time it gets up to us at the full board. And having people on this with a varying viewpoints of ideology would also be very helpful as well.
Further discussion? Did you ask for a roll call?
You know what, let's do this as a voice vote.
Okay.
We just, the maker of the motion, re-quote the motion so we all know what we're voting on?
Yes, I would like to make a motion for final passage of the formation of an ad hoc joint committee to provide recommendation on debt service planning relative to the anticipated capital expenditure over the next 5 years, and adding an additional member of the Board of Aldermen as appointed by the President of the Board.
You've heard the motion. No further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Division? Who was in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, okay. It carries. Motion carries. Petitions,
None.
nominations, appointments, and elections.
Downtown Improvement Committee, Mary Lou Blasdell, reappointment, term to expire December 31st, 2026, 32 Webster Street, Nashua, New Hampshire, 03064. Richard Lannon, reappointment, term to expire December 31st, 2026, 7 Taggart Drive, Nashua, New Hampshire, 03060. Business and Industrial Development Authority, Carl Andrade, reappointment, term to expire September 13th, 2025, 12 Mountain Laurels Drive, Nashua, New Hampshire, 03062. Arts Commission, Jennifer Arnond, reappointment, term to expire February 1st, 2027, 90 East Hollis Street, Nashua, New Hampshire, 03060.
There being no objection, I'll accept the appointments by the mayor as read and refer them to the Personnel Administrative Affairs Committee. Reports of committees. There being no objection, I'll declare the report of the February 7th, 2024 Finance Committee be accepted and placed on file. There being no objection, I'll declare the report of the February 8th, 2024 Budget Review Committee be accepted and placed on file. There being no objection, I will declare the reports of the February 12th Planning and Economic Development Committee be accepted and placed on file. Confirmation of mayor's appointments.
None.
Unfinished business resolutions.
Second reading of R-24-003, amending the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development Consolidated Plan for fiscal years 2021 through 2025 to reallocate Round 1 CDBG-CV funding under the 2020 CARES Act.
Alderwoman Kelly.
I'd like to motion for final passage of R-24003, and I'd like to speak to it, please.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Thank you. So this came to the committee. We actually didn't have anyone to speak on it, so they came back. We pulled it off the table and we chatted a little bit about it. Basically, we had money that was put out the year before that didn't actually meet the criteria, so we had to put that back into the fund. So the United Way is doing work where they're actually putting computers, tablets, phones into people's hands so that they can access services, education. It was a program that started in COVID and really fits the narrative and the things that we want to do with CDBG and the city. So we did say yes to them, and we're grateful for them to come in and it passed unanimously.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries, and Resolution 24-3 is declared duly adopted.
Second reading of R-24-019, relative to the acceptance of an additional $377,874 from the State of New Hampshire's Department of Health and Human Services into Transit Grant Activity Federal Transit Authority FTA operating grant.
Alderman Senate.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to make a motion for final passage of R-24-019.
Motion is for final passage. Discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries, and Resolution 2419 is declared duly adopted. Unfinished business ordinances.
None.
New business resolutions.
First reading of R-24-020, authorizing the sale of surplus property.
Additional sponsors? Alderwoman Timmons, Alderman Moran, Alderman Senate, Alderman Clee, and myself. Given its first reading, I'll send that to the Committee on Infrastructure.
First reading of R-24-021, authorizing the sale of city land, the NIMCO site.
Additional sponsors? Alderman Moran, Alderman Timmons, Alderman Govea, Alderman Clee, Alderman Dowd, and myself. Given its first reading, I'll assign that to the Committee on Infrastructure. New business ordinances.
First reading of O-24-005, authorizing a stop sign on Danbury Road at its intersection with Watson Street.
Additional sponsors, Alderman Timmons, Alderman Moran, Alderman Tebow, Alderman Clee. Given its first reading, I'll assign that to the Committee on Infrastructure.
First reading of O-24-006 regarding posting the budget on the city's website and providing a hard copy to the library.
Additional sponsors, Alderman Moran, Alderman Thibodeau, Alderman Sullivan, Alderman Senate, Alderman Clee, Alderman Dowd. I'll sign on too. Given its first reading, I'll sign that to the Personnel Administrative Affairs Committee.
First reading of O-24-007, authorizing a school safety zone and 2 school zone flashing speed limit signs on Buck Meadow Road.
Additional sponsors, Alderman Moran, Alderman Thibodeau, Alderman Govea, Alderman Timmons, Alderman Sullivan, Alderman Jettie, Alderman Tebow, Alderwoman Kelly. Given its first reading, I'll assign that to the Committee on Infrastructure. They're going to be busy. Period for general public comment. I have 2 people who have signed up. Matthew Guthrow.
Matthew Guthrow, 104 Fawn Lane. Mayor, Madam President, Alderman, I came to speak with you today about my concerns from last night's budget meeting concerning the unfortunate circumstances of a shortfall of $4.5 million in ESSER funds that you in this horseshoe appropriated towards an elementary school building project in October of 2022, approved by the Joint School Board Building Committee. Miraculously, as we could only do here in the season of Lent here in Nashua, that $4.5 million turned into $8.5 million in proposed bailout by the taxpayers. Many of us here in the community are concerned how this could happen. I heard the same concerns voiced by several people and aldermen here in this chamber, in this horseshoe, about how you could have egg on your face from your constituents as they wanted answers about how this could happen. You know, some people in your wards were talking about, you know, how did this happen? And I think this boils down to one word: transparency. Dan Donovan, the Chief Operating Officer for the Nashua School District, came to this podium last night and said that 4 people were aware of this situation back in late May or early June. That was him, Mario Andre, the superintendent, Sean Smith, the Director of Plan Operations at the Nashua School District, and the Chair of the Joint School Board Building Committee, Alderman Rick Dowd. Late May or early June. But none of you here in this room, nobody in the public, became aware of these temporary fund grants were not available for the construction project that you approved and that were budgeted for this until December.
1 minute.
6 months later. So why would your colleague, Alderman Dowd, withhold this information from you and the public for so long? Members of the public came and spoke last night and indicated that this was politically motivated. And my Ward 2 alderman, who won by the slimmest of margins, didn't want this information out during the election season. I'm more pragmatic than that. You know,
30
I
seconds.
think that this situation could have been addressed sooner with some surplus funds, you know, that you guys had at the end of fiscal year 2023. But you guys never had the opportunity to do that. As a result, I ask you, Madam President, to open an investigation of why this information wasn't brought before this Board of Aldermen sooner, and that you remove Alderman Dodd as the chair of the Joint School Board Building Committee. Thank you.
Lori Orlano?
Lori Ortolano, 41 Berkeley Street. I'd like to address a little bit on the Mohawk property development. I would like to see this board embrace an understanding of what information on that project will be public. It is my opinion that this is going to be a public-private partnership, similar to what happened with the Art Center project, and we never had records defined on that project. And however this develops, I would like to see those records defined or an understanding of what we have access to so that we don't engage in these fights and arguments between citizens and government on what's really public and what isn't. And I want to highlight to you on the Art Center project, that was a public-private partnership, but really not called out by the Board of Aldermen, and not really told to the public that that's what it was. And Black's Law Dictionary describes a public-private partnership where the public and the private entity both have a controlling interest. We were told as the Art Center was being developed that we had no controlling interest in the city. The two nonprofit corporations formed were not under the city's control or management or representation. And then there was never a public hearing where the formation of the private company, MPAC, was disclosed. All of a sudden, in an omnibus resolution, 3 weeks before the closing documents were signed, the city comes in with 25 pieces of legislation that you approve in an hour, which never specifies that MPAC Corp as a private corporation is taking over, and that all the records are going to go dark, and that the money is going to be managed by a private company. And you won't be able to see or get anything. You won't even see construction reports. You know, this is before the courts, and there's a lot of interesting stuff going on regarding the constitutionality of what was done in that art center. And I don't want to see this repeated again. I want to see transparency on these records. Tim Cummings mentioned that, hey, for the public's perspective, things change. He's right. As you develop this project, things are going to change.
1 minute.
But let's make certain that the change isn't like the change for the Performing Arts Center, where a private company comes in and scoops up all the public money and goes dark. You know, Director Cummings called that a little nuance of the deal. That wasn't a nuance. That was like a fart in church. That was massive. That was a big deal. And none of us in the public, and I don't think the board understood what you were doing and what you were giving away. So please, let's not do that again. And as we engage in these partnerships with projects, let's make certain the public understands what's available to us. It's okay that some of it isn't available to us. It's fine. But let's not have citizens digging around fishing, trying to figure out what it is. Thank you.
There's another person that wants to speak. Give your name and address for the record, please, and you have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. My name is Bradley Conway. I'm here to talk about Palestine, but I'm originally from Merrimack. The Gate City is very dear to me. I was born in Nashua. I currently work in Nashua. My grandmother was born in a house on Locke Street over on French Hill. My grandfather has a brick on the Veterans Memorial Park at Railroad Square up the road. My parents met at Sanders on Canal Street back in the day, and I care about this community. I'm here representing an organization called Southern New Hampshire for Palestine. We are currently campaigning to pass ceasefire resolutions across the state. We started in Manchester, and we expanded to Durham, Portsmouth, Concord, and starting tonight, Nashua. We're so excited to announce that last week, ceasefire resolutions were passed in the city of Durham and Lebanon, New Hampshire. For those who may be unaware, the U.S. federal government is giving another country, Israel, money and weapons to commit genocide and steal land from its native inhabitants, Palestinians. It's been graphic and harrowing to be on social media for the last few months, and everyone's affected by this issue, whether they realize it or not. I ask the board to humor me. Please imagine for me one person starving. Okay. Imagine you had the ability to provide that person with food and clean water, but you refused. Imagine 1,000 people starving. Can you? What about 100,000? They're all eating animal feed to survive in tents out on the street. There are actually more than 576,000 people currently starving in Gaza due to this U.S.-manufactured humanitarian crisis. 30,000 people have died. That's more than the entire population of Merrimack. People across the state really want to point out that this brutality is never acceptable, no matter who's doing the killing or the dying. The ceasefire campaigns we're bringing across southern New Hampshire are all based on the same idea, that global politics affect our local community. New Hampshire's congressional delegation, led by Annie Custer, Jean Shaheen, and Maggie Hassan, have failed to represent the urgent humanitarian and diplomatic interests of the people of this state, and now they're turning to their city governments and their resolution processes to try to end the genocide. People are desperate to stop the genocide everywhere we go, and we think the City of Nashua's resolution process would be a powerful way to engage the residents of Nashua in democracy.
30 seconds.
Thank you. Of course, this is relevant to Nashua because the residents pay for genocide through their federal income taxes. Nashua residents witness disturbing images on their social media every day. Nashua residents experience heightened racism and discrimination because of this issue. Nashua residents are more reluctant to experience joy because others are suffering. But most notably, Nashua is home to 2 branches of BAE Systems, a weapons manufacturer that arms Israel as it commits genocide against Palestinians.
Time.
Thank you. Can I continue? BAE Systems provides components for fighter jets, combat vehicles, gun systems.
Excuse me, your time is up.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Remarks by members of the board? Alderwoman Timmons.
Thank you, President Bushaya. I wasn't going to speak on this, but I think it's important.
You need to talk into your mic,
I
please.
wasn't going to speak on this, but I think it's important that I do. The Board of Aldermen received a letter today, and I was definitely offended by the letter. I take exception to it. The letter made it perfectly clear, and I just want to point something out. I was a single mom in the military, serving in the military with 3 kids. I'm a citizen, I pay taxes, and my children was raised in this city. They went to school in this city. They also are good citizens of the city, and they pay taxes. I was insulted because the writer implied that the Monahan Manor people may not be liable citizens. You know, she talked about their education and how bad the school system was, and what offended me most, she said, the citizens in Monahan Manor need adequate housing with a great education and will be able to adequately serve the population. And she said, no. Yes, they would be. I was in the military. I was able to serve the military, and you too, being in the military, being a single mom. One of the things she said that, you know, I don't take offense to it. Her words, those people, what people is she referring to? Those people. We are citizens of this city, all of us. Whether we live in Monahan Manor on exit 9, no offense, or exit 1, or all the wards that's got big houses. We are citizens of this city, and we should be treated with decency and respect. And just because you think they don't pay taxes, everybody in this city pay taxes some kind of way. Either they pay taxes to their tenants and paying taxes to the landowner, but whatever, they still paying taxes. And I think it's unfair to single them out as less than. They are not less than. And just because you look at a person with a skin color that's not the same as yours, does not mean they're less than. Don't automatically assume that they're on welfare, or they're low income, because I happen to be middle class myself. My kids are middle class, but I'm also a single grandparent. I raise my grandchildren because their mother died. There's reasons why people are living in affordable housing. Just like there's commercials saying that you don't know the story about the homeless. Well, you really don't know the story about people that's in low income either. And I really took exception to that letter. And I wish that the public would not just assume that because we build affordable housing, we will not have a viable city. Nashua is, congratulations, Jim, first, the safest city in the country. That's no accident. We had those same people live in this city. They're viable to this city. So I really did take exception to it. And I think she meant what she said. I thought the letter was racist. And I can read between the lines. And I know when somebody is I don't want to say the verb, but you know what I mean. And I think this person is, and I just took really exception to that letter, so, I don't want to go more into it, but you guys read that letter, and you know exactly what she meant. Those people, really? Those people like who? Like those people? Like those people? Like those people? What those people was she referring to? Or these people? I don't know. We are just all people that live in this city, that want the best for our families. Those are the ones that can't afford expensive houses. Those are the people that is the low income. Those are all of us. We make up the city. And I love this city. And all of us make up the city. All of us. So that's one of the things I really took exception to the letter. That's all I'm gonna say about that. I'd like to congratulate Mr. Griffin on his retirement. Again, thank you, Nashua, for being the safest, great city to live in. I would move out, but if I really did not like it, and I didn't like to pay my $7,500 taxes, I would move. Bottom line. Thank you.
Alderman Moran.
7,500, that's it?
Yeah, that's it for me. That's it for me. One house.
Thank you, Madam President. And I will have to say to my colleague to my left, I'm aware of the email. I have not read it in depth, but there's a handful of people that can relay information of the othering that I would trust, and this Alderwoman is one of them, and many others here too. Because othering's bad, I probably shouldn't do that right away. But yes, othering of anyone is reprehensible, whether it's based on your religious affiliation, the color of your skin, your economic level. We don't need to have draconian arguments about any of that. Let's just stick to the facts. All right, so I'll be the first to say it. He's here in the back. Director Sullivan, congratulations. 40 under 40 for the union leader. I am very surprised that the mayor did not bring that up in his comments, but I'm sure he'll hear about it later on. But again, you join a great class of people, Alderman Govea, myself, previous Alderman Tenza. Anyone at Alderman Jetty? Were you on there yet? No. Missed it.
It would be a struggle for me to get
Alderman
up to
Kelly, were you
40.
40 under 40? Were you 40 under 40? Or was that the Telegraph? I know Alderman Clemens was the Telegraph. But congratulations, work well done. And I texted him a small joke about it. I'm not going to say it here because Alderman Jetty gets too much of my jokes about newspapers. And he was just so professional about it, didn't even acknowledge my joke. And that's the kind of guy he is all the time. He doesn't turn it off. He's always very professional. It wasn't a crude joke. It was just a very funny newspaper competition joke that I'm sure Alderman Jetty's putting the pieces together as we talk. My last comment, as I move on, because I really think I'm going to get a lot of angry text messages about wasting time tonight, mostly from Alderman Sullivan. So as we look at development in the city, I just wanted to bring this particular piece of information up. I did sign on to sponsor the NIMCO site. Some of you may know I've been trying to really push for low-income workforce housing as opposed to whatever this affordable housing 80% thing is. But you can't really hold it against NIMCO overall because it wasn't in the RFP. We're going to move forward with that, hopefully, with good recommendations, and we'll have more housing with that affordability component. But there's plenty of research out there, and it kind of ties into what Alderman Timmons was saying regarding gentrification and the elimination of poverty through developments of what urban development, revitalization. It's all radicalized gentrification to push poverty out into the not even the suburbs, out as an exodus, that it no longer will exist because you price people out. And then you also tie that into low enrollment of schools when you're just focused on condos and studio apartments that we're subsidizing. And we've already had these conversations about schools that we might have to close. We also have to look at it as a social science, because everything is interconnected. When we're pushing developments that won't allow for families to move in, young families to move into this city, or young professionals to couple up and stay here and make babies and not leave, we're gonna kill our school through low enrollment. And that's what's already happening. It's only a small piece, but please be mindful as we're moving forward that when it comes down to having a school closure conversation, we might be complicit in how we push developments of subsidized funding for these condos. They're great. The one over here, one of my clinicians, $1,600 a month, just moving in. It's awesome. She can afford it because I pay well, but the folks in that neighborhood can't. They'll be leaving very shortly. Thank you.
Alderman Sullivan.
Thank you very much. Just a quick congratulations to John Griffin for everything that he's done for the city. And congratulations to New Hampshire's kid governor, Ellie Lively, for everything she's going to do for our state. That was great to listen to, so thank you very much.
Welcome. Alderman Senate.
Thank you, Madam President. I have a couple things I'd like to touch on tonight. I'd like to start by thanking the folks over at DPW, particularly Director Photo and her staff, group over at the landfill, wastewater, street department. I had the opportunity to spend 3 very interesting hours with them this past Friday, getting a crash course really in everything DPW and everything that they're doing, everything that they want to do, the challenges that they're facing as they attempt to do all that they do for our city. So I just want to extend my thanks to them for everything that they shared with me on Friday. It was very eye-opening. I'd also like to thank Nashua Fire Rescue, Nashua PD. Just last night, when I was on my way to the budget meeting last night, we had a bit of a scary incident over in Ward 7 at the Marshall Street Apartments involving a vehicle into one of the new buildings over there. Fortunately, as best I can glean, everybody's okay. Due to the quick thinking of a resident over there who has a firefighting background as well as a U.S. military background, the gas was shut off. As far as I understand, that gas line was ruptured, but due to his quick thinking, further tragedy was prevented. So it was really nice to see that everybody got out of that relatively unscathed. Everybody was able to stay in the building, and it's nice to see that level of community involvement over there. Congratulations to Ellie Lively, the kid governor. I don't know if anybody shares my sentiments, but I absolutely love seeing young people get involved in a civic level. I think that's the most exciting thing that we could see as civic leaders in our city, because that's really forming the next generation of people who will sit in these seats one day and make decisions for our city. And to see kids taking an interest in it that young always just makes me excited. I love seeing kids come with their parents to the polls. I was really excited the other day when my son came home and told me that he knew all 3 branches of the government, and that when I quizzed him on it, he got them right. So, these are the things that I really love to see. I think that's what's going to make our city a really great place for years to come. And finally, just to reflect on some of Alderwoman Timmons' comments, very strong agreement that we really need to move away from the innocuous things that divide us, color, race, income level. We're all residents of this city, like Alderwoman Timmons said. My predecessor, Alderman Karen, towards the end of last year when we were facing situations in Ward 7 in regard to the encampment that had popped up over on Crown Street, was often quick to remind us, there but for the grace of God go I, that, where we are today could all fall apart in this instant tomorrow. And I'm constantly reminded of that. that, I, in my situation, perfectly middle of the road, middle class as well, it could all fall out tomorrow. I'm very lucky to be where I am. And I have neighbors that are not so lucky, but together we make up a community. There's no dividing lines in our city charter or in the way that we're governed that say, these folks have a say and these folks don't. We've had folks that have sit in this horseshoe that own homes, that rent their home, and we all come to the table because we are all Nashua. And I think we need to keep that in mind as we go about this term. And that's all I have tonight.
Thank you. Alderman Tebow.
Thank you, Madam President. As always, I always have a lot to say. So first off, I just want to put faith in our alderman and leader of the JSSBC, Rick Dowd. He does an excellent job. He knows about the school systems. He knows about the building of the schools. And I want to continue to put my faith in him as the leader of those committees and what he does. So I wanted to start off by that. Another comment about something that was brought up tonight is Performing Arts Center. How long are we going to talk about that? It's long and it's been going on for a year. It's full most nights. We're making money off of it. The city's doing great. How do we want to develop a city? If some people had their way in the city, we would bring nothing to the city. And we would just let it die like other cities in Massachusetts have. Go hang out in Lowell. It goes up and down. It's great, then it dies. It goes up, it dies. We have to do development, whether it's things coming out of Bitter, or whether it's things coming out of the Mohawk Tannery or the Performing Arts Center. You have to try development, and it's not always, hey, we just got to take $30 million and build something. Sometimes we have to do TIF projects, and in the Mohawk Tannery, for instance, getting a private partner where the private entity's paying and the EPA's paying some, the Fed, and then we're giving a $2 million loan that we're going to get back. So sometimes you have to do weird things to make sure we're not saying we're just going to spend $40 million and do that. That site is sitting there in goop, as they call it, or whatever they call it, right? Just still being a hazard to people who want to go into those areas. And so what are we going to do? Let it sit for another 40 years? We have to find innovative ways. And I have faith in Director Cummings, Director Hannon, Matt Sullivan and his planning department that we can get this done the right way and build something that is good for the community. And I hate people coming in here and constantly trying to bring Nashville back to 1970 where there's nothing being built, the city's dying. Alderman Clemens, if he was here, he'd be telling you about how crappy the city was in the late 80s, early 90s, and it had to be turned around. And it started with our mayor when he took over at the end of the 80s. It's important that we continue to move forward. If we sit still, the city dies. And sometimes we have to make tough decisions. And we all know, and some of you guys are conservative with money. I want to be too, because it's important. And so we do have to find those alternative ways to do some of this stuff. Otherwise, we're never going to continue to grow the city. I think the Performing Arts Center was a great addition to the city. We used to have 3 or 4 movie theaters on that street. So I think it's good to try to bring culture back to the city and get people here to spend their money. Number 1 city for safety, police and fire, excellent job, thank you. And all the departments that work for safety, right? It's not just police and fire, it's disaster recovery. It's our health workers. It's other people that work directly for the city. And I want to thank them for that. It's their hard work that put us in this position. We shouldn't take that lightly. Some people will mock Wallet Hub. I don't care. We're still a great city. And if you live here and don't think it's a great city, go look at another city, because we're pretty good. I can't not say something about Director Sullivan, because I've been teasing him for about a week now. 40 under 40, congratulations. I honestly thought you were over 40. So this is a huge news to me. I was expecting Director Cummings to win it. So congratulations on that, and continued success as you go closer towards 40 in your career. And lastly, one more thing. So I want to address the comments about the resolution for Palestine and Israel. I don't think that's something that a city I don't think that's something we should do. Although I will say, my personal opinion is the Israeli government and Hamas are both doing terrible things and people are dying. And that has to stop. One way or the other, it has to stop. Good Israelis and good Palestinians are getting killed. That's wrong. Now, we don't have any power in that. But I just wanted to make a comment on it. It's nice to hear something different that somebody cares about other than you guys all suck, right? And so I think that's important. So I want to thank the citizen that came up and did deliver those comments. I appreciate that. And lastly, the kid governor. She's in my ward. She did an awesome job tonight. She came up, she spoke, made me smile, made me think about when my kids were that age, and she spoke great. She came by last week to test out the seats. I let her test out Alderman Clemens' seat, and she wanted to make sure she was ready for the big time, because I said, this is on TV, man. A lot of people watch this stuff. And so she felt comfortable, and she came in, and she did a great job, and she's gonna represent us well for the next year from Nashua, from all the other different cities and towns. We got it from Nashua, we got it from my ward. So I was very proud to see her come in tonight and wait out the Mohawk Tannery and all the other stuff we had to talk about to get to her presentation. So thank you.
Alderman Clee.
Thank you, Madam President. I too want to congratulate Ellie Lively, Mr. Griffin, and Director Sullivan on their accomplishments. Just a quick comment on Ms. Lively. She is the second governor from, kid governor from Nashua. And ironically, both of them had animal rights as their platform, which goes to show the students of Nashua as well as New Hampshire are for more animal rights. And I hope that the representatives up in Concord are listening, that our young generation care about this, because it's very difficult to get any legislation. And I know this firsthand through, I worked on it as such, and obviously this is one of my passions. So the other thing I want to speak to very quickly, but I can't let it go without saying it, is that I have full faith in Alderman Dowd, that if he did know about this, we would have known about it as well. I know the comment that was made, the way it was put was, I think he may know. I don't know if that's true or not, but I would think if Alderman Dowd knew emphatically that we were going to be here discussing this, he would have let us know. And just to make this very clear, there are no lost funds. It's just the happenstance. It was explained. I do think, as I stated there, we still need to look under every cushion to find any dollar we can do to, so that this doesn't hit the taxpayers as much. The Wallet Hub, #1, safest city. Everybody talks about the safest city as being fire, police, public health and so on, but it's also financial stability. And that speaks volumes to what we try to do here in the city. And I want to make a comment and make this very, very public. I grew up in the projects of Holyoke, Massachusetts for the first 9 years of my life, until we moved to Chicopee, Massachusetts, where I kind of grew up doing farming. So don't judge a book by its cover. Don't judge a book by where somebody lives. Don't judge a book by someone's color of their skin. We all are in this life together, and I hope that we can do it peaceful. I pray that the person that may have made those comments didn't mean as they said, but I am not Alderwoman Timmons, and I don't have to deal with many of the things she has to, and I respect her completely. The other thing that I do want to state is that the summer camp registration through Parks and Recs is going to be opening up on Friday. And as I was sending out emails to my constituents, I was amazed at the summer camps. And please indulge me as they name them out. We will not only have the Babe Ruth baseball and Babe Ruth softball, but we're going to have archery clinics, Caramba soccer camp, music camp, Latin music for ages 8 to 12 and 4 to 7, and the National Community Music School will be putting those on, working with this. They're gonna have Music Camp Broadway Babies, ages 4 to 7. Music Camp Broadway Week, ages 8 to 12. And Ms. Rinaldi is going to be writing these plays for these individuals to be doing. She is the director of the National Community Music School. They will be having Music Camp Piano Camp, Music Camp After Dark Chamber Ensemble, Music Camp After Dark Rise Up and Create, Music Camp After Dark DJ Experiences, Music Camp After Dark Rock Band. All these are ages 12 through 17. This, I do not know what this is. Skyhawk Mini Camp, ages 12 to 17 and ages 5 to 8. Tennis Camp. Wicked Cool Dinos versus Robots, K through 5. Wicked Cool Science, ages K through 5. Wicked Cook Vet, it's supposed to be Wicked Cool, I don't even type properly, ages K through 5. You know, they're gonna have swimming lesson sessions. There's 2 trips that Parks and Rec is putting on. One is a Boston Red Sox versus the Nationals, and that's gonna be on Sunday, May 12th. Round trip ticket and to the game, $75. The second trip is to New York City on June 8th. Getting back to the camps, there are some costs associated with this, but there are also scholarships. So anyone who can't afford it, please don't run away from it. Call Parks and Recs. I know that the music school is putting up scholarships for many of these music things, and I think it's just so important that more of the residents know about this. I was just so excited to read all of it, and thank you, Madam President.
Welcome. Alderman Dowd.
Yes, I know the people that made the comments left, but I have never made a decision that involved a political campaign. And I've been involved in politics for 45 years here in the city of Nashville. And there's a lot involved that, in decisions. But I can tell you 2 things. One, the original bond went to the Board of Education and was approved with the $16 million in ESSER funds listed in the bond. And to this day, I have not received anything in writing from the school department saying anything about the ESSER funds and the shortfall. It's all come up since basically a meeting we had in November when it was finalized, and they had called a meeting so they could notify the Board of Education of that fact. So, you know, I didn't say much last night because I didn't want to throw anybody into the bus. I felt like a couple times I heard the backup thing on the bus for me, but, you know, there's a lot involved. And the only thing I care about is we need to finish those schools because the kids deserve it. And it's long overdue, and we're already committed on the contract with 2 companies to finish those schools. The other things besides the $4.5 million of things that came up since this all started to surface, and we don't have to do any of those other things, except the BDA. We don't have a choice there. That's a fire department requirement. We can let the roofs leak, but do you want the roofs leaking on the stuff that we have already done? So we'll talk about this again in a couple of weeks, and but I really take offense when I see somebody come in that was supporting my opponent and try and say this was a political thing. No. I would have brought it up long before if it had come to light, and let things fall where they may. But to me, the only thing that's important is doing the right job and doing it correct and getting it finished correct. And that's the way I've been working on school projects for over 20 years. So that's all I had to say.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Thank you. I have 2 things I would like to talk about. One is the discussion we had last night, and the continuing discussion since then. I think there has been an echo within this chamber around the idea of this blame game not going anywhere. And I think that's really important for us to think about. We're here as leaders to help this city run efficiently and for our constituents to have a voice. And that's exactly what everyone in this chamber is trying to do. So blame gets us nowhere. We got together, we had a lot of really incredible conversations, people offered up, and it's one of the hardest things to do, to say, I made a mistake, I did, but we're all human. And there was really good discussion about how we're going to postmortem this, how we're going to change it in the future, and that's what we have to focus on. So, the second thing I wanted to talk about was what Alderman Timmons brought up. You started with, I wish I wasn't gonna say anything, but I'm really glad you did, because I think you understand just as well as I that myself, you, Alderman Gathright, we were some of the very first people who looked like us to be on this board. And I don't like to bring that up as a badge or anything like that, but the conversations that we have in this board are because of lived experience. And the conversation you just put out there wouldn't have happened if we weren't sitting here. And I think I love Nashua because we are such a diverse city. It's really important to me for my kids to grow up like that. And I think that that lived experience, whether you grew up in the projects or you're a single mom or you have 2 children and you've been in Nashua your whole life, is what makes us really great advocates for the city. So thank you for speaking up. I didn't read the letter. I'm sure I'll be just as incensed when I get to it, but thank you very much for bringing that up and having the courage to say your piece on it. Thank you.
Did you have something to add? Go ahead.
I did. I wasn't going to, but I am. I know there's a history with certain members of the community and this horseshoe. And what I heard tonight, because I'm new probably with an open mind and I don't know the whole history, I heard a woman expressing her concerns about what she feels may have been shortcomings in our efforts and asking us to do better. And then I heard some members of this horseshoe laughing and making a mockery of it. I expect us to do better. That's all I have to say.
Okay. I would like to congratulate Ellie Lively for her new position as kid governor. I love that she chose animal abuse as her platform. And she sounded very, very intelligent. I mean, she spoke well, and it was really, really nice to see. And as far as being the safest city, I agree. I think we are the safest city because of everyone here, not just because of fire and police, but everybody who works here, everybody who puts their time in and makes it the safest city. And safe doesn't always mean, you know, your own safety, you know, it means a lot more than that, so that's all I have. Committee announcements. Alderman Timmons.
Okay, thank you, Madam President. I want to remind the public that the Allison Street Community Center is doing renovations, and you need to leave, all the organizations that's in there now need to leave by March the 20th. The renovations will stop by that day, so if you can get all your things together and out by March 20th, that would be really great. Also, tomorrow, which is February the 28th, the Cultural Connection Committee meet at 12 o'clock, noon, and then, of course, we got the Finance Committee meeting at 7 o'clock.
Other committee announcements? Alderman Clee.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to remind Alderman Bryan is not here, but tomorrow we have the Infrastructure Committee, and there will be a public hearing prior to that. And it is on the calendar. Thank you.
Alderman Jettie, do we have a motion?
Yes, I move that we adjourn.
Motion is to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned at 9:15 PM. Thank you, everyone.
I wanna know who we left.